Hello. Today in this video, I'm going to talk about how to read a research paper in finance if you're working in quantitative finance or risk management in the industry, right? So this video is useful only for people who are working in the industry and not in academia, even though some of the tips that I'm going to give you will also be useful in the academic world. But I think I'm making these videos for the industry professionals, those who sometimes have to read academic research papers for whatever reasons, like how to make the best out of your reading and how to quickly grasp the gist of the topic discussed in the research paper, right? So I'm gonna talk about that. For that, I've taken a research paper from Fade's website. It's a research paper on interconnectedness of the corporate bond market, and this is a research paper written by the researchers in Fed. Now, you probably would know that people who work in the regulators, who work for the regulators, they normally, in most cases, have a academic background. Like these people are like PhDs with probably several years of experience in the academic world. So the writing style is very similar to writing style used in the academic world, which is that in order to convey a message, they have used long sentences, long words, and long paragraphs, and so on. Unlike in the industry where straight communication is preferred in most types of communications, very direct communication, coming to the point directly. So that's something you will not find in the research paper you would read from the regulator, right? And the academic papers are more or less the similar papers, probably even worse in terms of the length of the paper, but also what's in there. And academic papers are never written for industry practitioners, so we should not even complain about that. But Federal Reserve actually publishes these papers mostly for industry professionals, even though the format is more or less the same as the paper published in the academic world. But without worrying about whether the paper is from the academic world or from the regulator or from a research publishing company, I think there are some thumb rules to be used if you really want to read a research paper and gain some insights from it quickly, right? So the things, some of the things to keep in mind. One thing is, okay, first go through the conclusion, right? It goes without saying that it's very important to understand the conclusion, right? Keep that in mind. What is concluded in this paper? If you go to the abstract, here in this paper, it mentions, okay, does interconnectedness improve market quality? The answer is yes, and that's actually a trigger for you to think, right? Normally, people consider interconnectedness in the world of finance to be not so good for the market, right? We have seen that in the financial crisis of 2008, that because of the interconnectedness in the banking world, we saw a shock, and we saw a global impact of problems stemming from just a few banks in the US. The impacts were felt in almost every bank in the world, across different countries. So interconnectedness in the world of banking and finance is normally considered not to be good, but this is in contrast to that view that is actually good. So that's the conclusion, right? So, so first thing is to go to the abstract. In many papers, you will actually not you will actually not get to know the conclusion of the paper in the abstract or from the abstract, right? Especially in academic papers. In such a scenario, just go to the last page, right? They probably will have a conclusion there. Okay, well, always start with the conclusion. Never read the introduction. The introduction itself is probably 10 pages or even more, right? So go to the conclusion. If the conclusion itself is not very interesting, then there's no point spending time just going through the entire paper, right? So very important that, okay, the conclusion is interesting to you, and it's of use to you. Otherwise, it's of no point spending so much of time, right? In the introduction, right, when you go to the introduction part in finance research paper, like other research paper in the academic world, but otherwise there is a reference to all kinds of other research papers, and you will never be able to go through these research paper, all the research paper, right? I highly doubt even the authors have gone through these many research papers themselves before writing this one. But there is this ritual in the academic world that every time you write something, you always make reference to other research papers and the conclusions from other research papers. So that's called literature review, right? Um, right, and they do it bit too much. I mean, um, referring to a couple of research paper is fine, but if you're doing that way too many times in the paper that you're writing, I think it can be very annoying, right? Instead of just writing the conclusion here, they would simply refer it to some other, and you'll never be able to finish the paper quickly if you really want to go through each one every references given in the paper. So best to avoid. Okay, just read the first page in the introduction and avoid everything else. First pages, few pages would tell you what this researcher is trying to do here, right? And don't worry too much about the references media. If the author has given some references but has made some important points in this paper, that's good. Otherwise, don't waste your time just going through the other research paper. You'll never be able to read a research paper then, right? You probably won't have time to go through each and every research paper, right? As I was telling you, right, introduction is always long, right? And it's never like a few pages, it's always like 10 pages, 20 pages, and so on, right? I think it's important to go through the methodology. In the academic world, they use very sophisticated methodology to do research, unlike in the industry uh, where simplicity matters. Why? Because you actually work with real money, right? Unlike in the academic world where there is no money involved, and you have plenty of time in the hands of the people doing research, and nobody anyway is using the work done by these researchers directly, at least. So they can do all kinds of things, but in industry we have limitations, right? So the modeling techniques are very simple in the real world, in the in the world of industry, whereas in the academic world, people sometimes use very sophisticated, very complicated modeling techniques, and they may not always be very useful for the real world. So be careful when you read, and if you really want to replicate something for your work in the industry, make sure that you assess the practicality of it, right? Whether it would be easy for you to use, implement, and get it approved by different committees in the bank or the asset management firm or whatever finance company you're working at. Many academic models simply cannot be used in the real world because they're too complicated, and academic people, they have the luxury of just exploring all kinds of things. You as an industry professional do not have that. So give some importance to this aspect of paper reading. If a paper is just talking about a lot of techniques which simply are too complicated for the real world, or very abstract, too abstract, then just avoid reading that paper, right? So methodology is very, very important, therefore. And in this particular paper, I do not see the methodology to be too complicated. It's fairly straightforward, right? The data used in the academic world is almost always publicly available data. Data that you can use to replicate uh, the outcome of the research, right? That is almost always the case. In some cases, if the people in the academic world, they have collaboration with some firm and they've got the data, okay, that is a very special scenario where you won't have access to the data, you won't be able to replicate the results. But the data used by academician in most cases would be data publicly available, so you can therefore replicate the results and see for yourself whether that makes sense. You can also understand the step by step research, the step by step process of doing the research and what the authors have done. So that's something you could do, but make sure that you have access to the right data. And you can even make it better, because if you're an industry practitioner and you have information that is not available in the public domain, and if you can combine both, right, the publicly available data but also your internal data, and improve on the results, that's something that you should also explore. Okay, right. Here they have done the benchmarking with other data sources, something that is less popular in the world of industry, but actually should be more popular actually, although it's gaining more popularity nowadays. But I think historically, I think benchmarking used to be less popular for a variety of reasons, simply because within industry there was hardly any collaboration to sort of gather data on different areas, right? But things have changed. I think in Europe, at least, I know that there is an attempt to collect data from different banks, different financial market companies, for the purpose of benchmarking, so that you can at least check whether the model that you are building or the research that you are doing is in line with the the benchmark. Otherwise, if it's too far, then there is a question mark. Maybe you are right, there is an outlier and you need to think more about it, or there's something seriously wrong with the data that you're using. Okay, so they have done the benchmarking, and I think this is a good motivation also for industry practitioners to do this. Okay. Okay, and yeah, here they have done different scenario analysis, like in different scenario, and they have also tried various other techniques, not just the core technique, but also alternate techniques. This is also a very standard practice in the industry, right? You just don't use one technique, right? You use several techniques and choose the one that is most suitable, and not necessarily the one that gives the best results, but most suitable could be, okay, it's easy, not so difficult, but at the same time it is easy to apply, use, implement, and get it validated and approved, right? They have done robustness analysis, which is very popular also in the industrial world, where you test the stability of the model, you test the robustness of the model, you do stress testing on the model, you do scenario analysis, and so on and so forth. So all these things are done here. So good way. By the way, in a lot of academic papers you won't find such things to be there. I mean, they would come up with one model and they would say this is the best model in the world, go ahead and using it. There wouldn't be any if and buts. Okay, in this scenario this model may not work, that scenario it may not or may underperform. So that level of detail is something that you will not find in each and every academic paper. But in this particular one, I think they have done a good job in providing different scenarios and where things will work and where it's not going to work. All right, so these are some of the things, and to my surprise, the conclusion is at the page number 30, right? And how big is the conclusion? Is one page, right? Which is a good thing, right? And then you have references. I don't know how many references. I highly doubt if the authors have gone through all these papers before writing. Sometimes I feel like the people just provide the references, even if they've read maybe one paragraph, two paragraphs from a paper. But nonetheless, giving references is always a good practice. Even in the industry, we do that. It's just that you do not have to take each references or each paper referred here very seriously. You don't have to go through each one of them. right? That's right. And the good thing here is that they've also given the important figures, the results, and everything. In some papers, you will actually won't find the different results. I mean, you will only find the last results, but not the intermediary results. As in, there are several models built, right? They will probably give the results of the one that is finally selected, and not the results from other models. But that is not the case here. They've given results from all the models they've used, and they've done a comparison of that. Okay, so yeah, these are some of the tips that I wanted to share. As always, thanks. And if you have questions, let me know in the comment section, guys.